Well, thank you very much. We're just going to kind of start out with a general overview of where some of the bulls and bears are in the market at the moment. He's going to switch it over in the back. So right now when we take a look at bulls, things that are going to carry the market as we take a look at prices more on that farm level, which is that new processing capacity that's going to be coming online. And that's kind of starting about this time. February, anecdotally, is when some of these plants are going to be demanding some increased milk. That will, of course, increase the demand kind of across the U.S. for a lot of milk that needs to go into this processing capacity. A portion of that, as Dr. Botel just mentioned, is that we are seeing some higher beef prices, and that has translated into some increased revenue streams or potential on the farm level as we look at some of those terminally bred animals. And that's also kind of led to this optimization in herd and replacement inventories. So when we take a look at some of our bull factors, as you can tell, that bull factors are kind of outnumbering the potential price increases that we see at the moment. So the biggest of which is very relevant today, is that it seems like we have a lot of policy things that could dramatically increase price. And I think a lot of our downside risk is actually kind of baked into those unknowns, more so than I would say the unknown on the upside at the moment. So with that, those policy things are, of course, the tariffs that are being discussed, tossed around right now, adjustments to any of our food assistance programs, these benefit things, and then also labor. If there is any policy that affects the availability of labor, either on the producer side, but through the entire dairy supply chain, could have some pretty dramatic effects. So married with that new processing capacity, that demand for milk is also at some should see more product arrive at the wholesale retail level for dairy products. The big question right now is how much of that is already baked into the prices that we're seeing versus how much of it will need to have some price adjustment in order to clear product as we go forward. We do see on the farm level in production, milk production as in terms of components, fat and protein, right? So that may have some offsetting effect as we may fill that solid demand on that processor side maybe a bit more quickly than what we anticipate. And of course, federal milk marketing orders have a better discussion, and rightfully so here. So I'll kind of group that into the policy category as well. And there are some geographic differences there, class differences, but big takeaway is that we do expect about a 30-cent per hundredweight decrease in our all milk price from that change on the producer level. So as we kind of take a look at where we're coming from, I think it sets a stage nicely of where we're headed. 2023, we had some of these record low margins. So margin is we're measuring as income over feed cost. So as we came out of 2023 and into 2024, kind of swung, and we have a kind of a nice snapshot of this microcosm of the cyclical nature of these dairy markets. 2024, we've seen very good margins on that producer level. As Paul mentioned earlier, we do see incredible variation on that farm level of what margin actually means. So the reason out of campus here is year over year, we'll see a $10 swing in cost of production per hundredweight between farms on any given year. So keep that in mind as we go along. It's easy to generalize and say, hey, 2024, good year, right? But again, as Paul mentioned, there's incredible variability within that. So again, as we talk about our component production, it's just amazing that every single year, fat and protein, we keep increasing over time. The joke on this is how long it will be before, instead of milking the cow and getting milk, how long will it be before we get yogurt. So I think as we keep going, it seems like we have not full genetic potential of the dairy cow, and I think that these numbers will just keep increasing as we go along. So what does that mean? It means that last year we saw a 0.2% decrease in total milk production, right? Now if we look at just the solid component of that, 1.35% increase in solids, right? So while our production was down, solids were up. When you're a processor, what means the most to you? Hundredweights or solids? Solids, right? So I think that's very interesting and somewhat telling as we kind of go along through these years of increased efficiency on that cow side of things. Also, what's very fascinating with this is we did all of this with 500,000 fewer cows on average for the year. So I get a lot of questions about this, and we kind of just spinning off of the beef topic. This is when we look at dairy cattle and beef. You can definitely tell, right, that we have been terminally breeding more animals. So I think there's a few takeaways in this, is that one, it is an increased revenue stream, and I think producers are realizing that, and are very for that. The other portion of that is I think we've optimized some heifer inventory and some replacement inventory, and that this does influence that supply of heifers as we look for the year ahead. But there is not a lot of evidence that says that that's likely to impact herd expansion or milk supply. There seems to be enough supply chain coordination, enough forward planning, things of this sort, that as we demand that more fluid milk, that supply will be met by the producer. So, and I do think we will see increased cow numbers as we go into 2025. Increased processing capacity. This is information put out by Everegg, and their number was $7 billion. I kind of continued that count, and I stopped at about $8 billion of new processing capacity. It's important to note that this is gross capacity, so some facilities will be closed, simply updated, some will be new, right? The other portion of this is that it's not like it just turns on all in one day. So it's kind of this continual progression of this increased processing capacity, and then therefore, as we go along, right, increased supply in the marketplace. So oftentimes, month, maybe more lag in between, some of these start times, the times that we start to see some of the impacts in the marketplace. So I think that in 2025, in this more short to immediate term, that increased demand is going to make a difference, is going to work to support those. I think there's still a longer term question to be asked of what does that mean once we do get more product in the marketplace, how do we keep clearing that product. So on the product side, if we take a look at cheese is big in Wisconsin. Cheeses are what we, is tied to our Class 3 price. Class 3 price, often we'll reference that cheese, and what's interesting is if you look at the weighted average retail price for cheese, as we get to 2024, we do have some outliers, but really that trend line, it goes up, but it's more or less level, right? We've seen some price sensitivities, fairly range-bound in that cheese price in aggregate, right? So if we contrast that to butter price, butter has really found a new price range that consumers seem willing to accept. So butter is that Class 4 price, and I think this is a lot to do, or a good depiction of why that Class 4 price, as kind of on that forward curve, does seem to still remain strong as we go forward. And also in relation to that processing capacity, we will see less total volume increase on new butter hitting the market versus the cheese as well. So one of the things on that, especially in Wisconsin, that we've seen are not only variabilities, like I said before, in cost of production, but also in pay price, right? And when you take a look at pay price, a lot of times that's determined on where they're supplying their milk to, cheese, butter, what have you, right? So we've seen price spread between that Class 3 and Class 4 during that 2023 and 2024 time period. So most recently, that Class 3 did come above Class 4, but now we've kind of seen that trail off. And it's, at least in my opinion, it seems reasonable that we would kind of see that Class 3 be at a discount for Class 4 for some time. And the futures kind of depict the exact same thing, right? So right now we see an average difference between Class 3 and Class 4 price is about $1.14, with some of our widest 50 per hundredweight. So as we kind of translate that into where the market is going to go, I think that as we look at all milk price, I think that that Class 3 is going to kind of pull down or put some pressure on that number. When we take a look at exports, if we are having more product, in the future. And if generally, when you look at good years for dairy generally mean either you have decrease in milk production of, you say, 1% or less, or increase in exports, right? And that's what we saw in 2022 is our exports were very good. And then when that happened, our price. Well, what's happened ever since in the last few years is we have seen this slow trickle down in the percent of exports that we are having. The good news is historically we're still in a higher range, that's for sure. But as we kind of look towards where we're going to kind of price pressures from the marketplace, exports certainly have to be a component of that. So just based on that line graph there, we see that the percent of U.S. milk solids exported is about 16% at the moment. And then kind of ending that discussion around exports, if we are we really need to be competitive in that world market. Thankfully, recently here we've seen, well, thankfully on the export side, we've seen that the U.S. milk price has come back in line with that world price. So, honestly, if we're going exports, we need to see that our U.S. price is slightly at a discount just to account for some of the additional logistical challenges that we face accessing some of these international markets. So as we take a look at what 2025 is going to mean on that producer level, when we take a look at margin, this is DMC, dairy margin coverage, income over feed cost margin. That orange line is where the current DMC margin is forecasted. The blue line is what I would utilize as kind of that adjusted forecast, if you will. I think that right now we're not really accounting some of the feed prices in that forecast as maybe accurately as what they seem to be as we go forward. And also, I think we're going to have some of these class 3 pressures come in, bring down that all milk price. So, while we were at that $14 per hundredweight margin previously, look towards the next year, we're going to be closer to that $11 income over feed cost mark. So, right now, I would say, $20 per hundredweight milk seems to be, that all milk price seems to be kind of that supportive level that comes through in that information. And again, price pressures half of the year coming from different larger utilization of class 3 milk, federal milk marketing order changes, things like this. And if there are any policy changes, we'll see that come in later in the year as well. So yeah, with that, 2023, not so great. 2020. The hope is that 2025, we don't have too many surprises and we can kind of keep riding these positive margins through the majority of the rest of the year.